He's one of the most respected actors alive, a man who built his name on intensity, silence, and total immersion. But behind Robert De Niro's quiet stare lies a history of volcanic tempers, wounded egos, and grudges that outlived the movies themselves. Over the decades, his pursuit of perfection left a trail of broken friendships, tense sets, and co-stars who swore they'd never work with him again. These are the seven actors Robert De Niro truly hated working with, and the feuds that defined his darker side. The story begins in 1987 on the set of Angel Heart. Director Alan Parker called it electric, but for Robert De Niro and Mickey Rourke, it was toxic from the first day of filming. Rourke was young, raw, unpredictable, the kind of actor who refused to take orders. De Niro, already a legend, worked with quiet precision, demanding total control of his craft. According to crew members, De Niro refused to speak to Rourke off camera. He wanted distance, saying it helped him keep the tension real. But Rourke saw it as disrespect. The hostility festered until years later, Rourke went public. De Niro's a big crybaby, he snapped. I looked up to him once. Not anymore. The feud simmered for decades. In 2019, Rourke reignited it on social media, calling De Niro a punk and claiming he'd blacklisted him from The Irishman. De Niro never responded. He never does. But his silence only made the tension louder. To this day, Rourke says he'd rather fight De Niro than work with him. For both men, Angel Heart became a battle of pride, and neither ever forgot it. The next rivalry took shape not in the 1980s, but decades later, when two titans of the silver screen tried to settle an old score inside a boxing ring. Grudge Match, 2013, was supposed to be lighthearted, De Niro versus Sylvester Stallone, two icons spoofing their own legacies. But on set, the air was thick with ego. Stallone, fresh off Rocky Balboa, saw himself as the ultimate underdog hero. De Niro saw himself as the real actor, the craftsman. Crew members whispered about unspoken competition. Who could get the bigger laugh? Who could throw the better punch? Who could steal the scene? When the camera stopped rolling, neither man said much. Later, Stallone joked that De Niro didn't exactly warm up to anyone. Others weren't laughing. Extras described the set as a Cold War between legends. They smiled for press photos, but behind the curtain, the rivalry was real. Two men who'd spent their entire lives proving they were the best, suddenly forced to share the same ring. But no clash better symbolized De Niro's inner fire than his uneasy alliance with the great Marlon Brando. When they joined forces in The Score, 2001, it should have been a dream pairing. The Godfather and the Heir. Instead, it became a slow-burn duel of acting philosophies. Brando, older and famously unpredictable, mocked De Niro's seriousness. "Lighten up, Bobby," he'd mutter during takes. De Niro, ever the professional, refused to break character. The tension was so palpable that director Frank Oz later admitted he had to mediate between them. Brando would sometimes refuse to speak directly to Oz, forcing De Niro to act as a go-between, something he despised. On screen, the result was flawless. Off-screen, Brando reportedly told friends, "He's good, but he tries too hard." For De Niro, that was the ultimate insult, coming from the man whose shadow he'd spent his career chasing. Their mutual respect never translated into warmth. When Brando died just a few years later, De Niro didn't speak about him publicly, but those who knew him said the silence carried regret, and maybe a little pain. By the mid-90s, De Niro had reached a new peak, Casino. The film glittered with excess, violence, and betrayal. But behind the glamorous facade, Sharon Stone described an experience that was anything but warm. She called De Niro cold, distant, and impossible to reach emotionally. For Stone, who poured her soul into the role, the lack of connection was devastating. "I admired him," she said later, "but it was like acting opposite a wall." De Niro defended his process, saying he preferred minimal interaction to preserve realism. Yet Stone's remarks stung. Years later, in interviews, she still called him the greatest actor alive. But her tone carried the weight of something left unresolved. Many believe that emotional distance is what gave Casino its authenticity, two characters united by greed but separated by emptiness. Even among method actors, few could match the meticulous tension between Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. When the two collaborated on Wag the Dog, 1997, it was a meeting of giants and a clash of methods. Hoffman loved improvisation, filling every take with chatter and movement. De Niro believed in restraint. One crew member described it as fire and ice. During one rehearsal, Hoffman joked, "Bob never talks between takes. Maybe he's saving oxygen." De Niro didn't laugh. The distance remained, polite but impenetrable. When awards season came, both received praise, but neither publicly acknowledged the other. It was professional, yes, but never friendly. Some say they respected each other more than they liked each other. Around the same time, another friendship quietly unraveled. Harvey Keitel and De Niro had risen together under Martin Scorsese. Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, The Irishman, their names were once inseparable, but success changes things. As De Niro became Scorsese's primary muse, Keitel faded from the spotlight. Friends of both men say jealousy and distance crept in. De Niro stopped calling. Keitel once said, "He's focused." Too focused. When The Irishman reunited them decades later, the chemistry on screen was undeniable, but the warmth was gone. Old friends had become distant colleagues. And finally, there was James Woods, the sharp-tongued co-star from Once Upon a Time in America. Their friendship had started with admiration. Woods praised De Niro's discipline, calling him the ultimate pro. But disagreements over editing and creative credits soured things. Woods later hinted that De Niro could be a tough man to like when things didn't go his way. The two never worked together again. Woods's comments grew more cryptic with time, implying betrayal without ever saying it outright. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the real Hollywood behind the curtain, make sure to subscribe. For Robert De Niro, every feud had the same origin: control. He wasn't cruel for cruelty's sake. He simply demanded truth, even if it meant isolation. Whether facing Rourke's anger, Stallone's bravado, Brando's mockery, or Stone's frustration, De Niro never softened his approach. He believed that comfort killed art. Today, when asked about those clashes, he rarely answers. Just a small nod, a look that says, "It's over." But the echoes remain. In interviews, in memoirs, in half-smiled recollections from actors who both feared and admired him. In the end, that's the paradox of Robert De Niro, a man who gave everything to his craft, yet lost pieces of himself along the way. The same intensity that turned him into a legend also turned sets into battlegrounds. And maybe that's the price of greatness, to chase perfection so fiercely that no one can keep up. Because for Robert De Niro, art always came before friendship, and that's what made him both unforgettable and utterly alone.